Wakey, wakey, it's Joey and Jakey talking Alan Wake 2. Joey, you've been playing Alan Wake 2, but more importantly, you've been waiting for Alan Wake 2 for about 13 years now. I am so excited to dive into it with you, but first, how does it feel to finally have your hands on the sticks playing this game?
Jake, when I started playing this game, when they dropped the title Alan Wake 2, I said, let's freaking go, baby! It's time! I was a literal child when the first game came out. And now 13 years later, and now this game is darker. I would say it's more mature, but it's still got that signature like Remedy silliness to it. In the hours that I've played so far, I've just been really enjoying it.
Awesome. Okay, so I imagine as a longtime fan, this is a big game, a lot to talk about. You've probably got so many different points you want to hit. So we were thinking we would break this down into some pros and cons based on your experience playing the game so far. And I am nothing if not benevolent. So I think we start off with a pro. Joey, what's the first pro you want to tell us about?
Well, you know, a lot of people, when they talk to me about Alan Wake, they always tell me, Joey, this game, I know you love it, but the gameplay is boring. The combat is so, repetitive. And to that I say, I agree with you about the repetitive nature of it. So I'm glad to see the first pro for Alan Wake 2 is that combat and just gameplay in general is a huge step up. It's more engaging. It's very unique for reasons I'll explain a bit later. With the case board and the writer's room, those are going to be their own sections a bit later. Remedy really took their time to, it took 13 years, right? They weren't working on this game for 13 years. But in that sense, I'm glad it took this long because they sort of took inspiration from games that have come out since then. Like the latest Resident Evils, for example. Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 4 Remake. It's very engaging. It makes combat more stressful too. I was just playing a few minutes ago, I was caught into a situation where there was so many enemies throwing axes at me, but I needed to heal myself, which takes 5 seconds to do, so I'm just on my knees praying to the old gods of Asgard that I don't get killed at this moment. It's much less repetitive this time around. It's also not entirely relied on combat. In the few hours that I've played, I didn't tally how many hours I've played, I'll put that in the edit right here. Maybe about a good 2 hours, and that's kind of being generous, was spent in actual combat. It's a slower and more methodical game than the first Alan Wake, but I think the first Alan Wake, the biggest strength of that game was its story, so they've capitalized on that more in this game. It's all about figuring out, because you play as two different characters, the writer Alan Wake and the FBI agent Saga Anderson, and the FBI agent's trying to figure out what's going on, so it becomes a detective game. And then Alan is trapped in this dark dimension, and he uses the typewriter to change the environments around him.
For somebody like me that doesn't know any better, so what are the actions that you are doing in the game primarily? Is it a lot of just skulking around corridors and there's little monsters and you're popping them Resident Evil style? Are you doing Batman detective vision, picking up clues? What is the gameplay of the typewriter?
Okay, so let's get into my second pro about that.
Okay.
The writer's room using the typewriter.
Yeah.
So Alan is, of course, the titular character. You play as him in the dark place. This is a dimension where his writings pretty much come to life. So there's parts in the dark place which basically looks like New York City. There are certain rooms where he finds plot elements that can change the environments around him, that open up areas for him to progress even further.
Oh wait, are they literally called plot elements?
Yes.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah,
continue.
as a writer, Jake, I feel like you like this.
That was interesting. All right, please continue.
Yeah, you find this new detail about this area. There's a cult, and you get a plot element that talks about occult ritual. And so then you use that plot element with the typewriter, and then that changes the area to look like a cult has just been here. Sometimes nothing happens and the setting just changes, but that's because you found the wrong plot element or you're using the wrong one.
I think what you're illustrating to me now is that I feel like there's some influence from Control, and because I played that game, and I feel like that had a lot of you turn around, things are different, you go in this room, things are wild and crazy. It feels like there is a little bit of that kind of
that's exactly
tone.
what it is.
Okay.
Yes, that's exactly what it is, except you're the one doing the changing.
Got it.
It's very fascinating. And when I first played, I played the preview a month ago, and I wondered what was the point of this to just change the environments. But sometimes changing the environments will lead you to, find a key to a locked door. Or what it's mostly used for is opening up pathways, because maybe changing the environment will leave a door unlocked, or will literally just break open a hole in the wall, and that's how you progress. And what's fascinating is you revisit other areas you've been to before using new plot elements that change that even further. It's a very interesting mechanic to use, and I really like that.
Is a big part of the draw just the interest in wanting to see what could or will happen next? Is that kind of like what keeps you going?
A bit, yeah. Like, especially if you're revisiting the same room like 3 times, and then the third time, like something major happens. It's just like, oh wow, I'm running away from the dark entity that's been following me for years. So really fascinating stuff, because the first Alan Wake toyed around with this mechanic a little bit, mainly just in the story itself, because that first game was all about, he wrote a story that's coming true in the real world, but it wasn't really a gameplay mechanic. Now they've made it a gameplay mechanic, and it's all the better for it.
Wow, okay, so it sounds like they're maybe capitalizing on what the vision for Alan Wake was in a way that they maybe couldn't back in 2010. Like,
yes.
Maybe it's more true to the vision. Would you like to proceed to your first con?
Yes, my first con.
Okay.
Since I just talked about these Alan Wake sections, I will say so far, these sections are a bit confusing. Like, it's very labyrinthian, as opposed to the saga sections, which are most often like set out in wide open spaces. Like, it's not open world, but there's still like more open areas out in the woods. Alan's stuck in this twisted version of New York City. There's a lot of tunnels, there's a lot of like small corridors, and it's very easy to get lost. Even though you do have a map, sometimes the map isn't very helpful, which does kind of conflate with another pro that I had, is that the game really doesn't hold your hand that much. It's not like you'll get an objective and it'll tell you, oh, go to this point on the map. It's right here. Go here. By the way, it's also on your HUD. Follow that on your HUD. You really feel like a detective in Alan Wake 2. And I think that's where the strengths of that pro of the game not holding your hand too much really lie, is when you're playing a saga out in the real world and you find a lockbox and you're just like, how do I open this lockbox? And there's a very subtle hint saying like, there's what's hidden behind this smile, and it's a drawing of this weird smiley face like statue, and then like, hey, I know where that smiley face statue is, and you go to that smiley face statue, there's the key. That's what I appreciate most, is like, it's not like, oh, there's a key combination here, guess I gotta find where it's conveniently written down for me. No, it's not like that. But although it doesn't carry over as well in the Alan Wake sections, because everything just looks it looks beautiful. The game is visually stunning, but the level design is a little bit more obtuse in those sections because of those. It's like a maze, pretty much.
And I asked this because I want to know, what's like just like walking around doing whatever you do in the game, what's like the scary situation at? Are you like a little bit like something's gonna jump out at you? Like, what is the flavor of scary?
Okay, so I would say the game is scarier than the first one, but not by much. I think this game's not really about, the scares, the jump scares or anything. I've never really felt particularly tense while playing it, but visually it's more horrifying, and you get that sense from like the first 5 minutes, the literal first 5 minutes of this game. It's been 13 years since the first game. Most of the people who played that game were probably like teenagers, because the game is rated T for teen, and it's just like, yo, you guys are old people now. You get ready for some serious, like, disturbing visuals. Like, I can't even go into detail about the nasty stuff you'll see in this. When I was just playing, I shot an enemy in the face, and it's just like their face was gone, but they were still coming at me. It was disgusting. I loved it.
Oh God, I don't know if I can handle this. All right. Okay, cool. So, do you have the next pro or con?
I have the next pro.
Okay, great. These
visuals are insane. There are parts where this game straight up looks like real life. And whenever I see a game that's touting realism, something like, I don't know, a Red Dead Redemption 2, for example, there's always something where I'm just like, okay, the lighting looks beautiful, but that's not what real life lighting looks like. There's not God rays everywhere just pounding you in the face with, like, look at how shiny we are. There's some moments, especially in the Alan Wake sections, when you're like in buildings, even while moving, like I would say like the screenshot looks like it would be a real photo, but even while moving, it was just like, okay, this is scary how real this looks. I'm shocked because the lighting is not like obnoxiously in your face. It's subtle enough to where it seems like you're looking at the back of a real person's head. It's strange. Of course, there's still parts where you can still tell it's a game. There's even some sections where like you look at someone's face and you're like, that doesn't look quite right. Especially there's reflections in the game too. I don't remember if this game uses ray tracing or not. I think it does. I think both quality and performance mode use ray tracing, but it doesn't utilize it quite well because when you look in a mirror, you don't really see much, just like grainy splotches. That's another con I have. It's just like, as real as this game looks, there's still some visual hiccups that kind of take me out of it a little bit. Like, I still don't think it overall ruins the game per se, but it's definitely noticeable. I played the game almost entirely in performance mode. There were times where I wanted to set the game to quality mode to see what it looks like for like a few seconds. Not too big of a difference, I'm surprised to say. I thought there would be like some huge downgrade to get this game running, targeting 60 frames per second, but for the most part, it looks kind of the same on both. But although both have visual hiccups, there's a part where I'm looking at a computer monitor, and for some reason, like swapping between emails fades. There's like a film dissolve between looking at emails. It's a weird nitpick, right? But that's just something I've noticed. You could tell this game is using some kind of upscaler like AMD FSR or something on PS5 on both the quality mode and performance mode. I don't know, I think they should like iron out some of those with patches. But for the most part, I'm glad to say that the performance mode at least runs really well. I've only run into a few frame rate hiccups here and there, but I am pleased. I'm very pleased at least with how the performance mode looks and runs. Like, you could tell in the quality mode the resolution is higher, but I'm just like, no, give me that 60 frames per second because my PC is not going to be able to handle this game. Like, I want it on PS5.
What would be your next pro or con about this game?
I don't know if this is really a con per se, but I've noticed, like, maybe in interviews, I think with Sam Lake, the director of the game, you don't need to, you could just jump right into Alan Wake 2 if you wanted. You don't have to play like Alan Wake or even Control to really get into it. And I have to say, you sure about that? I have to ask him, are you sure about that? I'm just doing my Tim Robinson impression. Because I'm a few hours into this game, like even like the first hour, maybe even 2 hours, I put myself in the shoes of somebody who would just jump right in, and I would be super confused. I would be incredibly confused about everything that's going on. There's not even a recap video. And I feel like that's been a standard lately. They mention like events that happened in past games, like at the very beginning, like, oh, Alan Wake, that author that went missing in 2010, stuff like that. There's so many like little things in there that if you just jumped right in, you'd feel like you literally just jumped right in the middle of this story. And that's why I have to say, you gotta at least play the first Alan Wake before you jump into 2. You have to. That is a requirement. You heard it here first. And if you have time, play Control also, because I'm not gonna spoil anything. Just a bunch of Control references right off the bat too, like straight up. Like it'll help you really understand how weird and twisted this world is. But again, Control, I wouldn't say is as much of a requirement as the first Alan Wake, at least.
Yeah, I mean, for somebody like me, I'm pretty surprised that there isn't that recap video there, especially since I feel like Remedy, they've got like that cinematographer thing in them that you'd think they would do something with that, like they would have a special approach to it. But for the people that don't know, there is an Alan Wake catch-up thing in the form of a Fortnite event.
That's so good.
So it's kind of sick. So I played through that, and I feel like it told me a lot more than I was expecting to get out of a Fortnite thing. So honestly, I'm ready. So maybe check that out if you're interested. But Joey, your final pro.
The mother flipping case board is so addicting in this game. What is the case board, Joey? I know you're asking me that in the comments. The case board, when you play as Saga Anderson, she utilizes this place called the Mind Place, which, as it sounds, is like a metaphorical office in her head. It doesn't pause the game, but you can access it at any time. So just don't access it during combat, because then you'll get hit and killed and stuff. She gets transported to this office in her head. She can walk around in. She can profile people to see like what they're... For some reason, she can read thoughts which is never explained, at least so far. But they do make it a point, like, it's weird how she's able to do that. So I'm sure they'll explain that later. So she can find out details of stuff like, where is this key? And then it's just like, I know this guy knows where the key is. And then for some reason, she can hear the thoughts of that guy, know where the key is. That's a bit out of left field. But, a lot about Alan Wake is just stuff that's just happens because magic and stuff. It happens. It's not explainable. But the best part about this place is the case board. So you've seen the detective movies, you've seen them all. You see like this big old board where people like stack photos on there, trying to figure out cases, tie rubber bands together. Like, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? You do that in this game. And if I explain it to you, you'll think that doesn't sound very exciting. But that's a thing you gotta use to believe. You find these clues all throughout the game, like by talking to people, by finding literal evidence, and you stack them next to each other on the case board. Sometimes it's a requirement, sometimes it's not. Like, if you need to know where to go next, you have to go to the case board and stack these clues together piece by piece, and then it'll tell you, okay, then you need to go here. That's the simplest way I can explain it. It's one of those things, like I said, it's one of those things when you explain it, it's just like, okay, whatever, that's whatever. But when you use it, it's like, that's all you're gonna want to do.
All right. So I'm obviously familiar with maybe the idea of the case board. I'm definitely familiar with it in terms of like how I've played a lot of video games that utilize it. Most recently, of course, Detective Pikachu.
Oh my God, you're right.
But I feel like anytime I see it, it is simply kind of like a UI element to organize like side missions, more or less. And what you're telling me is that there is an active role that you play in putting things up on the board that you actually find engaging and rewarding.
Yes. It's not even like you get like a prize for putting stuff together.
Yeah.
It's a reward in and of itself. It's bizarre, and I love it. Like, yeah, it's a requirement sometimes to put that stuff together in order to figure out your next objective, but a lot of the times it's not, and I still use it.
So when it's not a requirement, why are you doing it?
I don't know.
No, but like, is it leading you like towards the same story path, or can you go and investigate other things?
It's used for side objectives too, like when you find like these puzzle, and that's what I want to know too. Like, what's the point of me stacking together these side things that I've collected? Like I talked about earlier, how you can find these treasure chests. Basically, they're like boxes, but I call them treasure chests. And after you unlock them, you can put them on your case board too. And I'm like, is there an incentive for this when I collect them all? That's what I want to know. But when I'm piecing together like stuff of the main story, that part's just really rewarding. Just seeing this case board being filled out with all the clues that I have collected, and once you actually figure out something without using the case board, it then auto fills it for you later. So it's not a requirement all the time. Sometimes it is. Very few times, I would say, has it actually been a requirement. But I really feel like it satisfies the need I have in my heart to fill things out to completion, like putting together a puzzle, pretty much.
Oh, okay. Now, before we wrap things up, and I give you kind of the last word and able to wrap up your whole experience with Alan Wake 2 right now, I want to ask you some quick questions that I wrote down beforehand that I'm curious about.
Okay.
Okay, Joey. Question number 1: can you change their outfits?
Yes.
Okay.
I haven't unlocked anything yet, though. So.
But you know that you can.
Yes.
Very exciting. Okay. Question 2. You're playing as 2 protagonists in this game. I just did Spider-Man, a game where you can play between and switch between 2 protagonists. How do you feel that is going? Do you like playing as one more than the other? Do you feel like people are gonna have like pretty much the same opinion across the board? Like, I like playing as this one more.
So the first few hours, like, you'll play as who the game tells you to play as.
Yeah.
But then you get to a point where you can swap between the 2 characters to like continue their part of the campaign, or so you could just keep playing as one as long as you want until you have to switch to the other character to finish their campaign. But I feel like right now I prefer playing as Saga right now because of the reasons I said. Sometimes the Alan Wake levels they feel confusing at times, but I do feel like also that'll be the main opinion here is that Saga Saga, both characters play well, but Saga is kind of the favorite. And Saga's the only one that can access the case board.
Yeah, okay. Is Alan Wake a good writer?
I think he's a little on the corny side of things.
Okay.
He's a little preachy, if that makes sense. All this stuff about, he uses a lot of metaphors, which I'm kind of just like, okay, chill out, bro.
Okay.
I used to do, I would get dinged in my English class for using this many metaphors. Calm down.
Okay. See, because he's got plot devices in the game. They should give him literary devices as well. You know what I mean? He can make a metaphor or something in
He
the
can
game.
find these items called words of power, which like give him stat increases, like increased damage.
What are the words? Is there like a specific word for damage?
There's not like specific words or anything. Right. There's just like words. There's like words. I think they're called words of power. They have sub words like words of fixing, words of damage, or whatever. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. Something about this is corny. Like, I get why you use that word, because even like the practice within itself of like literalizing writing terminology is like a little corny in and of itself.
Yes.
But that's kind of like, it's when you talk about this game a lot, you have repeatedly used the word goofy, and there is kind of this self-aware, almost campiness to a lot of the stuff going on. It's very stylized.
It's so self-referential too.
Yeah.
Like Remedy references themselves all the time in their games. Okay. In the first game, he's on a talk show with Sam Lake as a guest. And Sam Lake is the director of the game. And that's another reason why it's just like, you can't just jump into Alan Wake 2 without having experienced Alan Wake and even Control. Because like, if you do, you won't understand. Like, you're gonna be like, who's Sam Lake? Why do I care about this person? Like, it's so bizarre, and that's part of its charm, and that's why I really love it. It'd be one thing if this was all wrapped up in like a bad game, but they make great games, so I feel like they've earned their right to be like this. Like, and not even to say like it's bad or anything. It's sometimes that kind of referentiality, whatever the word is, doesn't click with a lot of people. But I'm just like, this is why I'm playing the game, man. This is good stuff.
Yeah, I get the sense with this game that there's really like a fingerprint on it. It doesn't have that kind of homogeneity of a lot of AAA releases. There's something particular about this. But let me give you my last question, and then I kind of want the summary and everything. But what button are you pressing the most? Is it jump? Is it shoot? Is it interact? Is it magnify? I don't know. Yeah,
I'm pressing X a lot. And that's the interact button.
The interact button. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of interacting you got to do in this game, like picking up evidence, looking at stuff to read.
Yeah.
You're going to be pressing the X button on PS5 a lot, the A button on Xbox a lot, and the B button on Nintendo Switch 2 a lot.
Oh, nice. Okay, you got me for a second there. I was like, what, dude? Oh my god. Okay, so are we doing a? I want your kind of closing thoughts. And then if we're doing it, your score.
Okay, closing thoughts on this game so far.
Yeah.
And the amount of hours that I've played of it, I have to give this game a rating so far of liked a lot. So the reason why I didn't give it a love yet is because the story so far has not had any like big oh wow moments yet. And that's why I really played the game. So far it feels like it's a lot of by the basic stuff, really catching you up on like what the world has been like in the past 13 years that Alan has been trapped in this place. So I'm really waiting to see like where the story goes, like what the turning point is, because it's getting me invested in what's going to happen. I really am dying to know how this game ends. Is he finally going to get out? Will he be trapped even longer? That is the question. I very much see myself coming out loving this game, and you know, I've been waiting 13 years for it, so I feel like I am a touched bias on this probably being my game of the year. As of right now, everything feels kind of like by the numbers sort of right now, and it doesn't help that I also played a preview like for 3 hours, so like last month. So a lot of this stuff is familiar to me, but yeah, let's go. Alan Wake 2.
I hear you. You gotta ratchet up the moments as you head into and out of Act 2 and Act 3. That's just how, and you don't know. You don't know yet if it sticks those landings or not. But you like the direction it's going. That sounds really good to me. And Alan Wake 2 coming out just in time on PlayStation, Xbox, PC for the Halloween season. And would you say this is a good Halloween vibes type of game?
100,000%. Oh yes. Right from the very beginning, you're gonna get those Halloween vibes, and you are gonna like it.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, I'd love to hear it. Well, Joey, thank you so much for this little talk about Alan Wake 2. If you have any comments about the game for Joey, leave them in the comments below, and he will get back to you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Happy Halloween.